With that, let me welcome you again to our webinar on our latest and greatest market report from UNDRESS Circularity about consumer insight in the use of circular business models in the German electronics sector. Before we get started with the results, I will just briefly explain what we will be looking at today. So after a short introduction about the program and circularity, for those who don't know us yet, we will be looking in depth in the results of this market research in the B2C and the B2B sectors. Those will be presented by Caroline and Adriana. Caroline from Deloitte and Adriana from the Institute of German Economy, who have both worked intensively with us on these results over the last 4 months. So we have some time in the end to discuss your questions, and I would ask you to please reserve your questions for that moment. We might have some time to discuss or for you to ask comprehension questions after the first presentation by Caroline. But otherwise, please post your questions in the chat so that we can collect them and go through them one by one later. With that, let's get started. So Circularity is a professional do tank for the circular economy in Germany. We work with professionals from industry to develop solutions for the circular economy in different sectors and put them into reality and really create tangible solutions for this transition. We have been doing that over the last 6 years in a wide range of different formats, and those ranging from small events on specific topics and specific challenges to large conferences over several days with hundreds of participants dedicated to a particular theme or particular value chain. Over those 6 years, we have been working with a wide range of different partners and clients who have all grown into a very good network who we are happy to be working with still today, and who probably merit a lot of the progress that we have been making in this transition over the last couple of years. One of our current flagship programs in the space of consumer electronics is CCEL. CCEL is a program that has started in 2022 and that we are currently relaunching to organize some interactive events on key industry topics, but then at the core of the program, work with 30 to 50 companies who will investigate specific challenges in small working groups, accompanied by us then to put these ideas that will be developed into reality and to concretize them over 4 to 6 months. Showing here some of the partners we worked with in the first round. We are very happy to have now gained Rebuy, Infineon, New Venture as partners for the upcoming program. If you want to know more about that and would like to know, please let us know. Also know that we will be focusing this year's CCEL program on 2 focus themes. One is repair at scale and the reuse of electronic devices, and the second one is recycling and material recovery. So all of that I'm explaining because the present project, UNDRESS Circularity, was actually born from CCEL 1.0, so to say, where a consortium of industry partners decided to voice the strong need to investigate the impact of circular business models, namely rental and second-hand sales of electronic devices, in order to really understand the impact they were having on the environmental impact they were having on the industry and on the use of these devices. And that led us to orchestrate this project, which started in March this year, and is involving, besides these core industry partners, also a group of associated stakeholders to make sure that these efforts are really linked to parallel efforts in the space of, for example, norming, or in the space of investment, or also in other industry sectors, and also by other industry bodies, such as the Circular Electronics Partnership, for example. or also in academia. So Circularity is orchestrating and running this project and leading it in collaboration with Systemic and Fraunhofer. And we are very happy about the support from the DBU, Deutsche Bundesstiftung Umwelt, and Deloitte. The fundamental problem or the fundamental task at hand stems from the fact that we are increasingly connected and that we are using an increased number of devices that have led to an intensification of harmful environmental impacts. And now circular business models are trying to address this impact by eventually reducing or limiting the number of devices that need to be built, that need to be produced, by extending the lifetime of the existing device stock and intensifying the usage of these devices, meaning reducing downtime, for example, of devices that we would not use every day or that we only use for a certain period in the year, such as cameras for a certain holiday or similar. And the project now is to really evaluate to what extent these circular business models actually extend the lifetime of electronic devices or intensify their usage. So this is a schematic representation of these business models, just to say that rental is typically consisting of several rental cycles and potentially then a second-hand use, whereas reuse is, of course, second and third use phase after an initial use phase. And so the two levers of prolongation on the left hand and intensification on the right hand are, of course, to be analyzed separately and are not trivial. And in order to really understand how this is happening at the moment and what effects are being achieved by these business models, and also how consumers actually adopt those models, we have performed the present market research, actually several market researches, because we performed this both in the B2C and in the B2B sector, and also did representative studies with Varian and the German Institute of the Economy, but also asked a couple of our partners to conduct these surveys within their customer group. So we really have a very large set of data to understand how, to what extent users are currently willing to rent or buy second-hand devices, and also to, for example, better understand the impact on prolongation of lifetime, how long users typically keep their devices, and what they do at the end of the lifetime with these devices. So all of that we will dive into in much more detail in a moment. Just keep in mind, UNDRESS Circularity is at the halftime right now. We are presenting to you the results of the first few months of our research, focusing on this market research. And in the second phase, we will be looking at the modeling of these impacts in much more detail based on the data we've gathered here, but also based on data from our industry partners. So it's a very hands-on, a real life data focused project. And at the end of it, you can expect an industry report in March 2025 that will provide a step-by-step guide on how to assess the impact of circular business models, as well as give an overview of our current industry dynamics and concrete case scenarios for the product life cycles and product flows that we observe at the moment, or that we would wish to observe more of if circular business models were adopted more strongly. So with that, let's get going and look into the results of our first market report. And with that, I would hand over to Caroline from Deloitte.
Yes, sure. Nice to be here and present the results to you. Yeah, Paul already indicated what we actually did. So we performed two bigger studies and two representative studies in the B2B and in the B2C sector, and had a focus aspect on the behavioral aspects of the customer journey. So how are these circular business models actually adopted? We're looking at rental and secondhand here. How are they then used? What are potential rebound effects that may occur, and are there any? How is the topic of repair currently handled and received in the market by customers and companies? And how do companies and customers act when they don't need their device anymore? So what's the end-of-life treatment actually? In all of those, not in all of those, for the B2B sector, we had some limitations if you look at the device categories. So for the B2C sector, we looked at 4 categories, the smartphone and laptop being the most used or being in the frequent used category. So we wanted to have a separation between frequently used devices and infrequently used devices. And yes, the frequent ones are smartphone and laptops. And as you can imagine, the unfrequently used devices are digital cameras and gaming consoles. And for the B2B survey, as you may imagine, gaming consoles are not that present in many companies. So we only conducted the B2B survey for 3 device categories, which is smartphone, laptops, and digital cameras then. And diving into the results of the B2C sector. So what did we do and what are the numbers behind the survey actually? So as already said several times, the study was representative of the German market. We conducted it with a professional service institute, Verian, and asked over 1,000 participants in Germany about their usage of circular business models in the consumer electronics sector. All the participants could at the maximum answer the questionnaire for 2 devices, and that's why we are coming up with a number of devices, about 1,700. So we have bit more devices in our study, as some people answered the questionnaire for 2 of their devices. So both of the frequent and infrequently used device category. That's why we have some difference in the numbers here. I will point it out in the results later if there are some differences that are maybe interesting to watch. And what we also did is we segmented, or we tried to segment our group of participants into specific, let's say, customer groups with purchasing intentions at least. And therefore we were able to build 2 groups, which is the sustainability conscious consumers. They indicated that they put emphasis on sustainable or making the sustainable decisions. We will see later in the results if that actually turns out as well. So if they are actually doing those sustainable decisions. This group is representative for 23% of the whole sample. And then we have another group, which is the tech enthusiasts. So these people indicated that they put emphasis on always having the latest model, on only using specific brands, for example. And this group is representative for 15% of the panel. Yes, and then as Paul also said, for rental especially, I don't want to spoil any of the results, but the current market adoption in the general population in Germany is not that high. And we already thought so and planned ahead and conducted additional surveys with Grover, who is a rental service provider, and asked specifically within their customer group of how people currently use their services. Okay, without further ado, let's jump right into the results, which structured the report also along the customer journey and along the different questions that consumers may ask while choosing the device. Here we are. So the first question is, what do consumers actually look at when they are thinking about buying buying electronics, I have to say. And I think it comes with no surprise that actually price is still the most important purchase criterion and decision criterion. Sustainability and also if it is the latest model, for example, are rather least important. So they are not among the top 5, as you can see here, rather ranking at the bottom. But as we see throughout the report, purchase and also warranty, so that's the second most here that you see in the middle, is also quite important and will have an important role also when we're coming to the circular business models. Then that's one of the most important findings for us. So how our circular business model actually used in the market? And what we see here is we have quite a different picture if we're looking at secondhand, which is one of the business models, or rental usage actually. So for rental, I already indicated only 1% of the respondents currently in Germany are using rental concepts. So we have a rather low adoption at the moment. We will see in a minute how the picture looks like for the future. But for secondhand, the picture is already quite promising. So 21% of the respondents have already acquired a device secondhand across all the different device categories. So every fifth consumer actually has already bought a secondhand device or acquired a secondhand device. Will adoption increase in the future? Because that's what, when we're looking at the current numbers, especially for rental, we're not, or it is quite low at the moment still with 1%. And what you see here is we ask participants, especially or only those who have currently bought new devices, if they are planning to use those circular models in the future. And yes, what we have to admit at first, 67% actually say they don't plan to change to circular offerings, which is, of course, also quite high. But nevertheless, the responses for if consumers are willing to change to secondhand, or especially are also willing to change to rental services, is quite high if you compare it to the current rates. So especially for rental, the adoption could eightfold in the future. So that's very outstanding. And also for secondhand devices, if we are looking here also at what that means in terms of number of devices that is used, also here the adoption could double actually. We missed one here. Now looking at our consumer groups, I already indicated at the beginning, we separated between, or we looked specifically at sustainability conscious consumers and the tech enthusiasts. And what do we see here? For the consumer electronics sector and circular business models in that sector, the sustainability conscious consumer group is actually putting their money where their mouth is. So in other industries also, we see that intention action gap. So people say, yes, I want to be, or I'm considering myself as sustainable and I'm trying to make sustainable purchase decision. But then if you look at how are those sustainable models actually used, the numbers don't turn out that high. But what we see here is that actually the adoption rate among those sustainability conscious consumers is actually much higher for the second-hand business model than for the general population with 30%. What we also have seen, it's not indicated here in the graph, but there are more details in the report for sure. We've seen that across age group, for example, and also across income, there is no difference between the single groups. So also we had that thesis in the beginning that maybe it's the younger customer group that is driving the trend of second-hand ownership. We actually don't see that in our results. So it's quite equal among the different age groups, for example, and also income groups. Yes, then now diving deeper into the topic already of second-hand devices. Why are second-hand devices actually used, and maybe also why don't they use second-hand models? So the reasons for buying second-hand, the first foremost is again saving money. So also here, as we've seen in the beginning, the price aspect is quite important, but it's also the sustainability aspect. So being sustainable, and it's more sustainable, considered as sustainable, that's also one of the top 3 reasons. The reasons for not buying secondhand is especially they just want to own a new device, or also they indicated that they don't have the financial need actually to buy secondhand. They are or they can afford having a new device, and that's also then why they buy the new device. what we see is here that definitely consumers kind of need to be convinced to buy secondhand. Yeah, it's either because of or can be done with the price, but also the sustainability aspect and communicating about that, including that in marketing, etc., can work out or will work out, as we've seen here for the reasons. Another very important question within our whole UNDRESS Circularity project is the use time of secondhand devices and rental devices. And what we wanted to do here is, well, we cannot compare especially the secondhand device usage with the new ones, because we cannot say if the secondhand devices is owned by its first customer or if it is a secondhand device that has already gone through multiple usage cycles. But at least the numbers here indicate, as you can see, that it is quite comparable. So at least secondhand devices are somehow used a similar amount of time as new devices. Only for laptops and the digital cameras and gaming consoles, you see there is a slight decrease, but all in total, it is quite promising picture. But we will follow deeper, especially on that topic, to actually really compare the different the lifetime of a device, so really across the whole lifetime, within our second report and the ongoing project. Now coming to the rebound effects. As already indicated, it could be that those circular business models in the end lead to unintended rebound effects, meaning maybe consumers buy more frequent devices or buy more devices because secondhand devices are cheaper, for example. And that's what we wanted to clarify with that question. And what we actually see is, yes, there are rebound effects. So here 42 people indicate that they now buy more frequent, but not more in total. If that is impacting the environmental impact in general in a negative way, also needs to be discussed in the second report in more detail. But overall, in total, we see that there are at least rebound effects that need to be considered. So when discussing the whole question of whether circular business models in the end are more sustainable, it's often easily said that that's the case. But actually, this question and these results show that there needs to be further analysis and deeper understanding of whether these rebound effects come to play and actually have a negative impact on the sustainability of these business models. Now coming to the rental part. So why consumers choose not to rent devices? We've put that question first because that one still belongs to our representative market study for the whole German population. What we see here is that actually most consumers prioritize ownership over access. So they're just willing to own. Also, the perceived financial attractiveness of rental could be an enabler, because currently lots of consumers notice that the current rental models there are in the market may turn out more expensive, always depending on the use intention, how long it should be used, etc. But at the moment, 33% say at least that it's not financially attractive to them. Now coming to our to the results we had performed with Grover, so the rental service provider we used, and we this one now is not representative for the German market, so we just asked their customer group what they actually value and why they are using the current rental models. Actually, here what's interesting to see, it's the access to latest technology. So it enables them kind of to have access to devices they cannot access via the linear chain or the normal purchase journey. They value the flexibility of the rental program. which is also quite interesting. And of course, also the technical support. So having it easily done, giving the devices to a repair center, for example, just handing them back to the rental provider, and the rental provider then takes care about the repair process. That's all top reasons for using the rental devices in the end. So if you look at that picture in total, you could say that, of course, behind all of those, let's say, services, there is, of course, also, or it could also be an economic advantage, actually. So, of course, that saves people time, etc. It's just a matter of how people value that. Coming back to why currently the adoption is quite low in the market, and relating to the financial considerations in that sense. So maybe clearer communication on the economic advantages could boost actually also those adoption of rental offerings, and what the value is behind those single offerings. Coming also to the rebound effects in that sense, we also asked the customer group of Grover about if there are rebound effects, and actually as well here we see that there is an indication. Rental users, for example, keep their devices for shorter periods, which could have a negative impact on the sustainability impact. So also in that sense, these rebound effects need to be closely considered when making statements about the sustainability impact of those circular business models. Then coming to the repair section. So how is repair currently used within the German populations? Here we're now back again at our representative survey. Looking at the results, we see that the adoption for using rental services is already quite high. So 59% indicate that they've already used repair services. And specifically looking at the sustainability conscious consumer group, we see that it's even higher. So 76% here have used repair services. Why some people maybe have not chosen to repair their device? Also here we see that the kind of financial consideration come into play, or at least the value behind it. 48% say that the repair would not have been worthwhile compared to obtaining a replacement device. And in some cases, repair was also just not possible. Or they even didn't know where to repair the device. So that's a clear call to action to everyone who's offering repair services to market that more and to make themselves known so people know where to go in order to have the device repaired. Yes, and now coming to the end of the customer journey, actually. So how does the handling of devices after the use is affecting the overall lifespan, and what do people do actually when they don't use their device anymore? And what we did here is comparing the answers for what did people do with their old device and what are people planning to do with their current device. And what we see, I think it's the first one here, of course, keeping it in drawer as backup. That's the most discussed question, I think, in the industry. How can we get these devices that are still stored away in some personal drawers? And there's a positive message in that report, because we see that number will decrease in the future. So that's already good. And also what we see is that in the future, more consumers are likely to sell their devices. And then that means making them available to the market again, and enabling kind of a second use or a third use phase after it is used. Also, the same message belongs to trade-ins, which are also on the rise, as you can see here, from 4 to 6%. Okay. Then coming to the key takeaways, what should you take away from the results in the B2C sector? Even though current adoption could be higher, especially for rental, adoption is expected to increase both for secondhand and for rental. If we are making statements about the sustainability impact and which business models are more sustainable, we need to be careful and keep the rebound effects in mind, because they are present at the moment. And we see that customer behavior in the future enables additional use cycles, which is also a positive effect for the circular business models in total, because that probably will increase the supply of use devices that can still be used multiple times by other users in the future. So all in all, we see a rather positive picture, I would say, from the B2C side.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Karin. I think we have no comprehension questions left in the chat right now. There's one that I would rather like to bring to the discussion later. In order to have enough time for the discussion, Adriana, I think we'll have to be quick. If you can manage in 10 to 15 minutes, that would be fantastic. With that, I hand over to you. Looking forward to the B2B results.
Thank you, Paul. So have you handed over?
Yes.
Yes. No. So hello. My name is Adriana Nelligan, and I'm a senior economist at the Institut der Deutschen Wirtschaft, and I'm very excited to be part of this project because it actually looks at circular business models, which are one of my main research topics over the last couple of years. And my colleague Leonard Bolvin and I were responsible for the company survey in this project. And before I start to talk about the survey, I think we need to consider, when we look at the results, that the B2B sector is a big market and it offers a huge potential, because usually businesses need large batches of similar devices and the decisions are made by professional management. So this makes the B2B market a very interesting playground for circular service providers. So since there was limited data on the prevalence of circular business models in the B2B sector and on their purchasing strategies and strategic goals, Circularity and their partners decided to have a B2B survey. And without taking the results ahead, I think one interesting overall finding is that business customers are different to private customers because they seem to be able to adopt circular offerings faster than the private private consumer. So what did we do? I don't want to talk too much about the methodology, but I just want to give you some facts given the time restrictions. So we conducted a representative study in 200 firms in June 2024. It was a telephone based interview. And the target people were IT procurement managers, both in industry and services of all company sizes. So we ensured that there was a balanced representation of firms to be able to draw meaningful conclusions about the B2B market for electronic devices in Germany. So because we were not looking at relevant devices, we looked at smartphones, laptops, and digital cameras. So we're not looking at gaming consoles because that's an irrelevant device, or not in companies. So to get enough answers of each, or detailed answers on each device, we had to make a random selection so that companies wouldn't have to answer for 3 types of devices. So overall, we got answers on 200 devices, but it covers more or less for 42% for smartphones, a third for laptops, and 23% for digital cameras. And on top, we also undertook, Circularity undertook a customer survey with Everphone because there's a really low rental penetration in the representative survey in the B2B market. So a separate non-representative survey was undertaken at Everphone, which is a B2B rental service provider. So before we dive into circular business model aspects, we asked the companies what were actually their general IT procurement criteria and strategies. So if we look at this graph, you can see on the right, the three categories on the right, you can see that actually flexibility, convenience, and sustainability dominate over price as prevalent purchasing criteria. So when it comes to buy a new device, that's what they're looking at. They look at flexibility, convenience, and they look at the newest device and high technical standards to less extent. And price is not really kind of the main purchasing criteria. If you look at the two categories on the left, they show that the procurement is also sustainability focused. So half of IT equipment managers aim to procure devices with a sustainability focus, and 42% of companies report having dedicated sustainability goals influencing procurement strategies. So overall, sustainability plays an important role for companies procuring IT. What we also see, if you look at the graph, that larger companies put sustainability first. So 2/3 of the larger companies, that's 250 employees and more, have a sustainability goal for tech device procurement. Although at the same time, only 60% actively seek to procure devices with a sustainability focus. Nevertheless, sustainability is the most important purchase criterion for these large companies. So sustainability first with the larger companies. Oops, sorry. So what do companies, well, sorry, that was too fast. So what do businesses consider, sorry.
This one, right?
Yeah, now I'm fine. So do companies consider circular business models at all? So what we did is we looked first at the prevalent procurement methods for German companies, and we also looked how high their inventory was with secondhand devices. So if you look at the upper graph, you can see the procurement methods. It is not surprising that the acquisition of new devices still dominates, but rental and second-hand purchases already play a more important role in B2B markets than compared to B2C. So 30% of companies are already also buying second-hand smartphones and laptops, while of course 9 out of 10 companies still also buy new devices. Rental is used in 1 of 10 companies, which are primarily in the case of smartphones and laptops. If you look at the total inventory, we asked the companies how high the fraction of second-hand devices is. Only about 6% of all companies have smartphones second-hand, and 70% of all laptops in use are second-hand. So when it comes, and that's what the lower graph shows, larger companies have a higher proportion of second-hand devices compared to smaller firms, but the shares are still low. So this difference between the purchase or procurement method versus the inventory highlights that there is an interest in second-hand offerings among companies, and that there is a high market potential. Now, this is not moving. No, I was too fast again. This is always taking a bit.
Now it's perfect.
Now I'm the right one. So we also asked, similar to the B2C survey, how long devices are used. And one main result is similar to the B2C, that there are no significant differences in usage during usage duration between new and second-hand devices. The only difference here you can see when you look at the digital cameras, that second-hand digital cameras are used almost a year longer than other new devices. So this is the only difference that we can see. So I'm going to wait for a second until it changes, otherwise I'm too fast again. So now, what is the motivation for second-hand purchases? So what you see in this graph is what the motivation is, why companies buy new devices versus second-hand devices. So if you look at this, you can see that fast availability is by far the most reason to procure new devices, but it is also important to second-hand for those who buy second-hand. When it comes to ranking, you could say for new devices, availability, flexibility, and data security are the main motivations. When it comes to second-hand, sustainability, financial reasons, and availability are the most important reasons. So when it comes to buying second-hand, financial considerations and sustainability are the driving motivations. It's interesting to see the financial considerations, because I showed earlier on that, well, the overall purchasing strategies do not focus on the price, but when it comes to picking second-hand devices, half of the respondents say that they pick second-hand for financial reasons. So one conclusion we can draw from this is that the immediate availability is key, and the second-hand market faces still challenges here. So we have a problem with limited supply and volatile second-hand markets. So if we can enhance the supply chain, we could boost the adoption in the B2B sector, because given the huge batches of devices they need a reliable supply of devices. So now I'm going to switch to the Everphone survey, which is non-representative, because as I said earlier on, our B2B survey wasn't able to draw any representative conclusions on the rental market due to the low relevance. So if you look at this survey, we can yield some valuable insights into the consumer experience with rental offerings. So service offerings is the key reason for companies to opt for rental, because the most critical criterion for companies renting electronic equipment is the maintenance and repair services and the flexibility of the service, and then followed by end-of-life services. So companies seem to exhibit a strong preference for outsourcing the management of electronic devices, whether it's for repairs, for the end-of-life handling, or the external IT support while in use. So even though it's not representative, it gives some really valuable insights on what companies want when it comes to rental. So why do not more companies use rental services or buy secondhand? That was another question we wanted to shed light on. So what are the actual barriers to growth of circular business models for electronics in B2B? So what are the main reasons for not using a certain procurement channel was the question in the survey. So if you look at the graph, and you see the purchase of secondhand on the left-hand side and the rental part on the right-hand side. So when it comes to secondhand purchasing, the managers refrain from secondhand purchases due to a perceived lower device quality and lack of flexibility, in addition to limited repair and service offerings. When it comes to rental, a third say they don't know any suitable provider. They have problems with the low flexibility and the low product quality. Overall, it is also the case for second-hand purchases. A third also say that they're unaware of suitable providers for rental or second-hand offerings. So this highlights a significant chance for providers of circular business models to enhance their visibility and their market presence. So in each case, a third, 1 out of 3 companies didn't know where they could actually find such services. So I'd like to switch from the procurement strategies and second-hand barriers, etc., to repair and what happens actually when devices break. So this is really relevant when it comes to the lifetime of a device, because the moment a device breaks, we need to decide what we do, and it determines whether we'll be disposing it or whether we'll repair it. So what we can see clearly in the survey is that for all 3 devices, in particular for smartphones and laptops, broken devices are often directly sent to recycling. So at the same time, even though that is the case, around 55 to 60% of the companies use external repair services, and around a third of the companies use internal repair services when it comes to laptops. So internal repairs are far less frequent than for smartphones and digital cameras. So when it comes to laptops, a third already says that they're using internal repairs. So it seems as if the repairability influences in-house repair practices, because laptops are repaired in-house twice as often as smartphones or digital cameras. And at the same time, broken smartphones are sold about twice as frequently as laptops and cameras. So this difference may stem from the greater ease of repairing laptops, their longer usage durations compared to smartphones, and the higher value of laptops compared to phones.
Adriana, may I suggest that we maybe skip this slide and jump directly to the final one, because then we can still have a few minutes to discuss some of the questions.
Okay. Okay.
Then I'll show
I think there's, yeah, I'm fine with that.
This is just the final one then.
I think I just say one thing. I don't want to spoil your direction of things now, but I think one thing is that a lot of firms still keep devices in the drawer. So you can see in this graph that 3/5 of the firms store them in the drawer, and I can come back to that later on in the last slide. It just takes quite a long time to, so now.
My suggestion would be actually that we show the slide and we already start asking, getting some of the questions from the audience. Is that okay?
That's fine. So to sum up, because we already also skipped a couple of slides, I'd like to just sum up. So, so what factors influence the IT procurement strategy? It's sustainability plays an important role for companies procuring IT, and an answer to companies consider circular business models at all. Well, we still buy mostly new devices in companies, but rental secondhand purchases already play a role, and they play a more important role than in B2C. So, so do companies use secondhand devices for shorter periods than new devices? Well, we didn't see any differences. And what drives the purchase decision? Well, it is flexibility and immediate availability when procuring new devices, and sustainability plays a central role in the choice of secondhand options. What motivates businesses, customers to rent in the B2B sector? Well, service and flexibility are the main reasons, and what hinders it is quality and low flexibility. What do companies do when devices break? As I just showed, they're mostly brought to recycling than to repair. and what motivates the companies to opt for repair. And that sums the last couple of slides, which we didn't show. It is for our warranty, coverage, internal efforts, which are key criteria. And what do companies do when they no longer need a device? Well, many devices are sorted out and end up in storage rather than being recycled or sold for refurbished. If we think, and this is my last sentence, if we think that we need a stable supply of secondhand devices, we need to get those devices out of the drawer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariana. Perfect. I'm sorry for the shortcut at the end, but I think it's worthwhile to look at some of the questions from the chat and just have a few more minutes. For example, Fridolin, you started to ask very early on about the future market development between short-term and long-term rentals. A very interesting question. I don't know if I share your gut feeling, which is that you say longer duration rentals would prevail. I think that could be if you argue, as you say, that behavior change that would be required for that is less important. Another argument against that or for shorter term rentals could be that the benefits of rental models actually are more important and more significant to users when they do that with devices that they don't need for a long time, because they have this gain in flexibility and they have potentially a lower financial burden, etc. But yeah, I would invite also others to comment on that here in the chat if you feel you have opinions on that. There was another question about warranty and the role of warranty in the reluctance towards second-hand products. As we saw, this is indeed a very important factor. Warranty is one of the key criterion and probably one of the key enablers for second-hand offerers and professional platforms to overcome the skepsis of users. And we have seen that. And it also plays a significant role in the B2B market, as Adriana explained, because it particularly impacts on how companies deal with devices that break. So warranty is something that has already been recognized by some offerers who offer, let's say, 3-year warranty periods, so longer than the typical or regulatory warranty really requires for new devices, but this seems not to have been recognized yet by all users. Then another interesting question about how price-conscious consumers could be further incentivized to adopt circular models beyond just the cost savings. So what we've seen, especially in the B2B market, but also in the B2C market to some extent, is the role of services, attached services to the circular offerings that go beyond the services you would typically acquire with a newly bought device, where basically there's a warranty and some after-sale services, but there's no close relationship between let's say the retailer and the client or the user at the end. So these services definitely play an important role in the advantages of circular offerings and could also convince more users to take them up. Are there any other questions that you would like to raise now while we're still all here online? Please feel free to unmute yourself and just speak up.
Maybe just the one that I asked earlier about the expectations that the drawers will get more empty, at least with the B2C constituency. Why is that? Is that because trade-in and resale goes up, or why is that? And is it the same for B2B?
So good question, and a very interesting point that we were keen to know more about also after that become a study a bit earlier, focusing on these 200 million devices in German drawers. So of course we have not asked like exactly how many devices we have in the drawers at the moment, but we did see this this trend that people say they will lean towards reselling devices rather than keeping them in the drawer. So yes, I do believe that the anthropogenic stock of devices will decrease through those models. I think there's also a phenomenon which is that these 200 million devices, we presume, are probably to a very large proportion old devices that do not have probably say a resale value today.
Yes.
Which means that it's not easy to get them out of those drawers through the mechanisms that we have in place with those circular business models. And that would rather be directly given into recycling if people are ready.
I would also say that we have to differentiate here, right? Because we asked about future intentions. And that means that likely in the future, less devices will end up in the drawers. However, we will need other measures to get the devices out of the drawers that are currently in there already. Because as Paul said, there is little value in these devices because they're typically old. So the first good message is that less products will be put in the drawers, but this will not, like also the trade-in programs of the world will not empty the drawers, right? And that for that we will need other measures. But we haven't looked at that in detail in the study.
Yeah. So I think in the interest of time, because it's exactly 2 p.m., let's sum up. So I will invite you to look at the report. We posted the link in the chat here earlier. Maybe we can repost it in a moment. And you can definitely also get it from a scan of the barcode that I will show in a second. So we are really looking forward to investigating number of effects that we've seen in this data, notably the rebound effects in the B2C sector, and also the impact of the different lifetimes of devices, second-hand devices and new devices, etc., both for B2C and B2B, and also the potentials for bringing a lot more devices into recirculation if businesses behaved in a slightly different way at the end of the lifetime of devices in their stocks. So there's a lot to do. We are looking forward to working on that over the next 6 months until the publication of our final industry report, as I said, in which you can expect a much more in-depth analysis of these device flows and the current systems map in this industry. And with that, I invite you to stay tuned. Please download the full report if you are interested in the details of what we discussed today, and get in touch if you have any ideas on how to make the study even better. Thank you very much.